Mark 13 is one of those passages that some guys love to teach on, but I'm not that guy. It's a startling passage, actually. It sounds like the whole world is coming to an end, and all of that world coming to an end is tied to the return of Christ. And who doesn't want to know about the world coming to an end and Jesus' return? There are hundreds, let me back that out. There are probably thousands of people who have plotted out the return of Christ down to the day.
The tick-tock of disproportionate hands, echoing the rhythm of incessant demands on my time's just a reason now for leaving this land to a better place, to a better place.
But people studied Jesus' words, and they wanted to determine when Jesus would return. And so 44 AD, a guy named Theudius declared that he was the returned Messiah, and he persuaded 400 people to follow him out in the desert. Well, he wasn't, and he was beheaded by a bunch of Roman soldiers in
AD 90 and 150 and 365 and 400 and 435
and 470. That one was important because in 470, that was 400 years after the destruction of Jerusalem and of the temple in AD 70. So that was a big deal. So everybody was predicting his return then. And then there was
500 and 950 and 368 and 989.
989 was a big one because Halley's Comet came through, and it seems like every time something like Halley's Comet comes through, people just get nuts. And in 1006, a supernova appeared, and wow, people were nuts.
Then in the 990s, there were tons of people predicting the end of the world because the world would end before the AD 1000.
1000 came, and people were nuts over the Y1K. They were scared. They were terrified. They were certain that Jesus was going to return. In fact, some people who were high up in the church were so certain that Jesus was going to return that they exhumed the bodies of several saints and exhumed the body of important people so that they would all be ready for Jesus to come back. I don't actually know what they did with them afterwards. People predicted
in 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. In 1006, there were a ton of them because of that supernova. It freaked everybody out. In
1010, Jerusalem was looted by Muslims.
In 1011, 1018, 1025, 1028, 1029.
And then they came to 1033, and there were all kinds of predictions then because that was 1,000 years after Jesus' crucifixion. So you know he's got to return now. Then there were predictions
in 1114 and 1186 and 1209, 1415 and 1420. Then they took a century off, 1524.
1524, a guy named Muntzer announced that the return of Christ was at hand, and God had called him to lead an attack on the government. And God gave him a vision that he could catch cannonballs in the sleeves of his shirt. Yeah, he was wrong.
And he and all of his followers were killed by cannon fire. Sad. And then somebody else predicted that at 8 a.m. on October 19th, 1533, Jesus would return. And so people gave away all their possessions, just like before he didn't come. There were predictions 1534, 1572. 1572 was important because it was 1,260 years added to the year that Constantine made Christianity the religion of Rome. Then there were predictions for 1621 and 1656 and 1660.
And then 1666 was important because it is 1,000 plus 666, which is God plus Satan, lions and tigers and bears, you know. Then in 1715, Sir Isaac Newton predicted Jesus' return. 1809, Mary Bateman had a magic chicken that predicted the date.
Then in 1814, there was a prediction. John Wesley believed that on the basis of Revelation 12:14 that Christ would return in 1836. Then somebody predicted 1843 and 1859 and 1874.
1874 was important because the Jehovah's Witnesses claimed that Jesus returned invisibly and that the beginning of the end of the world would happen in 1910. Then there was a prediction for 1881, 1910, welcome back Halley's Comet. Everybody went freaking out. The Jehovah's Witnesses were wrong. The end of the world didn't start. But then they thought Jesus would return
in 1914 and 1918 and 1920 and 1925 and 1941, 1975, and 1994.
You got to give them an A for effort. Now, there was a prediction.
In 1917 and 1920 and 1953 and 1916, 1967. Oh, we're getting close to the year of my birth, so that was important, but nobody predicted it that year.
In 1970, people started circulating tracts saying that the world was going to end soon and it was going to be global chaos. In the 1970s,
Moses David, the leader of a group called the Children of God, predicted that a comet would hit the earth in the mid-70s and it would destroy the United States, which of course, you know, would be the end of the world, and it would bring about the coming of Jesus. In 1973, there was a big comet that was supposed to come through, and so there were lots of predictions, and then people couldn't see it very well, and that was even worse.
1977, there were killer bees in Texas, and they were linked to the images of the plagues in Revelation chapter 9.
On September 10th, 1979, because the final sign for the return of Christ happened on June 28th, 1967, people said, well, September 10th, 1979, of course, will be the day of Jesus' return. You get that, right? Anyway.
1981, all of the planets would be aligned, and the next year, Hal Lindsey predicted that the rapture would occur because when the planets were all aligned, the Earth would be destroyed, and earthquakes, and there would be nuclear plant meltdowns,
all caused by these planets all being in a line. Another person figured out that the rapture would happen on June 28, 1981, and Jesus would return on May 14, 1988. There was a 1982 date, a 1984 date. 1986, the Russians were supposed to begin the Battle of Armageddon and destroy Israel and the United States. There was a prediction for 1987, 1988.
I remember 1988. There was this book that came out, 88 Reasons That Jesus Would Return in 88. The date was September 11th or September 13th, somewhere in there. It didn't happen. In 1989, the guy who wrote the 88 Reasons and sold a ton of copies, in 1989, he said, oh, I was wrong. It's 89 reasons that Jesus will return in 89.
I don't think anybody bought the book. In the 1990s, you have David Koresh, who believes that Jesus would return sometime in the mid-90s. No, well, 1995, it was kind of the end of them. 1991, 1992, there was a mission there was a group called the Mission for the Coming Days. They predicted October 28, 1992. Leading up to that, the leader swindled millions of dollars from his followers, and he went to jail. 1992, there was a whole one-page ad in USA Today announcing that Jesus was going to return then. 1993, people believed that that the return of Jesus would happen in 2000. So the rapture would be in 1993, which would of course allow 7 years for the tribulation. It's simple math. Jesus would return in 2000. In 1994, Harold Camping made his first stab at the date. He said it'd be September 15th. Then there was 1995 and 1996.
And some people calculated the date of creation as October 23, 4004 BC. And so they circulated this idea that they knew Jesus would return 4,000 years later, which would be 1996. Missed it.
1997 would be Jesus' 2000th birthday. And so prophecy experts gave him a 90% chance to return that time. I guess everybody's wrong. 120,000 psychics all got the same vision, and the end of the world would be December 31st, 1997, or maybe the beginning of 98. They all had the same vision, so it must be true.
1998 was the year that it equaled 3 times 666. Just saying.
1999, Russian scientists looked to Nostradamus and found the answer. 99 to 2000, that was just nuts. Christians and kooks all over the world predicted the end of the world.
Y2K. One of those famous Bible code people found evidence that Armageddon would commence with a grand nuclear holocaust in 2000. Hal Lindsey pops up again in 2000 and tried to say that Jesus was going to return on sometime in 2000. Catholic historians found evidence that Pope John the 23rd said that Jesus would return over New York City on December 25th, his birthday.
The year 2000. Then came 2001, and nothing exciting happened in 2000. And everybody who made a 2000 prediction realized, oh wait, since there was no year 0, all of our predictions will be valid, but in 2001. Then in 2004, somebody calculated that the Psalms predicted it'd be 2004. Hal Lindsey steps up again and says maybe 2007. Well, he was wrong again. And then some people suggested 2010.
And who could forget Harold Camping's May 21st, 2011? Who could forget that date? And just in case we think we've arisen above that, what about December 22nd, 2012? That's when the Mayans have us going.
And then there's a prediction for 2016, and 2034, and 2047. So we have plenty to look forward to.
Or maybe what now has gone to a better place. To a better place.
People are looking at this Mark 13 text and others, and they're seeing all kinds of things. You know, they think they know when Jesus is returning. Honestly, I wish I had the answer, but I don't. And actually, I'm not exactly sure I wish I had that answer. People have obviously spent hours and days and weeks and years studying the return of Christ. And people smarter than I am think that they've got it all figured out. They've got the dates and the times and the events and everything. But I look at this chapter, and what I see are lots of specifics that point to the fall of Jerusalem. And they say it's going to be horrible. And guess what? It was. And I look at this chapter, and I see it pointing to the hope of Christ's return. But I don't see anything that tells me when. And I know that there are people who want to map out the future and know exactly when things are coming, but I don't think you can do that with any real specificity. I think there's a real danger in looking too hard at Christ's return. Let me explain what I mean. I see a lot of people who orient their entire lives around leaving. We're like kids who go to work with their dad, and every 5 minutes we ask, "Can we go home now?" It's like this place where we live now is just a place to be endured, and we can't wait to leave. It's an escapist theology. You know, we meet every moment in our life looking to the next moment, and our whole theology is built around one of those days. One of those days is going to get here soon enough. And the future is something that we should look forward to. But today is here, and today is now, and today is what life is made out of. And our faith has to be lived out day by day by day in the place where we are. Jesus ends this section of Scripture with a parable on how we live our lives. He says a man goes on a journey, and whenever he leaves, he gives his servants stuff to do. Everyone has a task. And each servant is given the task, and one of the servants is given the task to watch for the master's return. And Jesus says to us, be on the alert, because you don't know when the master is going to return. And his point is this: you do what you are called to do. Serve in the household of the master. Serve well. Serve diligently. When the master returns, we want to be about the master's business. So this life is hard. I know that. There will be times when being a follower of Jesus is not popular. I know that. There will be times when the tribulation of this world is overwhelming, like when natural disasters strike, like when evil people do violence against innocents, like when disease ravages our body, like when money is so tight that we can barely squeak by. There are times that tribulation is horrible. But there are also times that this life is great joy. Cups of coffee with your wife. Laughter with your kids. Worship of God. How about that moment when the sun comes out through the clouds and you can see Mount Hood? A walk with an old friend. Naps. And our job, through times of tribulation and through times of joy, our job is to be about the master's work. Every day, when you get up to go to work, you are about the master's business. Every day, when you touch the lives of the people around you, you're about the master's business. When you're on the internet, when you're reading a book, whatever, you're about the master's business. In everything you do, be about the master's business. We are not about escaping this world. We're about living here. We're about doing what we're called to do in the trials and in the joys. We're about making the most out of every single day. And on the day that Jesus returns, we'll celebrate. And until that day comes, we will serve.
Won't someone please get rid of these clocks?